Hi, everyone. Dr. Justin Golston here. And the purpose of this video is to go through all of the topics that you're going to see on the exam. Now, I ask that you do not get nervous or overwhelmed about the exam, in that if you listen to this video in its entirety, we're going to go through every single question, every single topic with examples to hopefully provide you with not only to better equip you for the exam, but also to provide you with the tools to be able to apply these concepts in your current role, in your internship, or to prepare for your job interviews. All right. So to get started, you're going to see a question in terms of supply chain flows. So if you refer to the video in the first week on supply chain flows, the components of these flows are made up of the manufacturers, or the suppliers, I should say. So it starts with the supplier, then it goes to the manufacturers, then from the manufacturers, it goes to the distributors, then it goes to the retailers, and then ultimately us as a consumer. So once again, starts with the suppliers, goes to the manufacturers, goes to the distributors, goes to the retailers, and then to the consumers or customers, right? So when we talk about supply chain flows, we have different flows. So the flows being the flow of information, the flow of products, and the flow of funds. Okay. Now, these flows, information, products, and funds, go both upstream and downstream. So as I said in the video, think of a water faucet. So whenever you turn on the water faucet, the water flows downstream, right? So it's the same thing with products, information, and funds. It essentially flows downstream from the supplier all the way to the consumer, right? But the most important piece is that information, products, and funds flow both upstream and downstream. Okay. So whenever you're going to see a scenario on the test, you have to understand that products, funds, and information flow both upstream and downstream. So to put that into perspective, when products begin with the supplier, those raw materials are going to go from the supplier to the manufacturer. The manufacturer is then going to send those finished goods to the distributor, right? The distributor stores, so think Amazon. When we talk about distributors, think Amazon. So a manufacturer, let's say Apple. Apple sends components to a distributor to store, or Amazon to store all of those goods, right? And then once the retailers, once the stores, once T-Mobile, once Verizon needs those components, those chargers, if you will, they're going to issue purchase orders to Amazon or to a distribution center. Once that distribution center receives those purchase orders, and they will send all of those products via logistics, we're going to talk about that soon, to the stores for you and me as a consumers to purchase those goods. So in that example, the products moved upstream at the raw materials from the supplier all the way down to us as a consumer for us to go into the Verizon or T-Mobile store to pick up those products. Now, that's downstream. In upstream, if we get that product and it doesn't work, so let's say we get the charger doesn't work, right? We go back to the store, return that charger, right? And then Verizon and T-Mobile could actually return that product. This product was defective, Mr. Distributor. Then they will return those products back to the distributors, right? And then the distributors could actually return that product back to the manufacturer, back to Apple. So in that example, although we raw materials started at the supplier and came all the way down to us, then when that finished good was defective, we sent it back upstream, right? So that's how the products can be both upstream and downstream. Now, if we talk about information, is information data, so that the manufacturers know how much product that they need to manufacture, and then once they get that information, then they'll send that information upstream to the suppliers, so that the suppliers know how much finished goods that Apple wants. For example, if we want to keep using Apple as an example, right? So information can also move both upstream and downstream. So a supplier could actually send what their capacity is. So if Apple said, okay, hi, Mr. Supplier, please send us how much capacity you have, which means how much raw materials can you send us in November, for example, for forecasting purposes, right? So they're going to send a request of information upstream to the supplier. The supplier receives that information, and then they're going to send their capacity back downstream to Apple, right? So that means in that example, information moved both upstream and downstream. Now, Apple could also send their production numbers to the supplier, so the supplier could be proactive in setting up their facility so that they have enough people to produce those finished goods for Apple, right? So again, information moves both upstream and downstream. With the movement of funds, so with funds, similar to products. So with funds essentially, so if Apple issued a purchase order, right? So they have to send the funds. So once they receive the raw materials from the supplier, then they have to send the funds upstream to the supplier, right? Now, if Apple finds those raw materials to be defective, right, then they will return those products back upstream to the supplier, and then the supplier has to issue Apple a refund and send those funds downstream, right? So once again, information, products, and funds move both upstream and downstream throughout the supply chain. We're also going to talk about the different forms of utility. So within supply chain management, you have different forms of utility, such as form utility. So form utility falls into when we're developing a product. You'll hear the term form, fit, and function. So whenever you're creating, so if you look at an iPhone, you can say, okay, there's certain form utility. So you can see that the iPhone has changed shape over the years, right? That's form utility. So, some people, they had received feedback from some of their consumers to say, okay, this iPhone was too large. Okay, we want a larger iPhone. Yep, that was too big. And then they've actually looked at the voice of the customer to assess that form utility. When we talk about time utility is one example of time utility would be within logistics. So because we have different modes of transportation, we have air freight, we have rail, we have ocean freight, we have road freight, right? Trucking. The time utility is important in logistics, and that will actually determine what form of transportation an organization or consumer will choose. Okay. So once again, logistics focuses on time utility. Okay. You also have technology utility, where in certain industries, such as the tech sector, technology utility will actually accelerate development. It will accelerate decision making within organizations. So technology utility is also one thing to consider. But when we're looking at it from a supply chain perspective, we can think of time utility as a different modes of transportation, which one will choose based on what the requirements are. Okay. You're going to see a question in terms of middlemen. within middlemen, you're going to, so for example, the middleman is the go-between in terms of the manufacturer and the retailer. Or you can view a wholesaler as a middleman between the distributor and the retailer. Okay, so in this example, we're going to focus on the distributor, the wholesaler, and the retailer. So if you have a large district, so Amazon, we're going to talk about Amazon later on. We're not going to use Amazon as an example in this case, but if you have a large distributor in Pennsylvania, right? That large distributor may not have the means, such as Amazon, to create a marketplace, although they store a lot of inventory, right? So they will have a middleman referred to as a wholesaler, where they could actually create a website and pretty much put up all of the inventory that this distributor has, right? And then the retailer will actually look at that wholesaler's website, right? And then the wholesaler is the middleman, and they actually take a portion of the sale to pretty much be the middleman. Right now, you've seen more and more organizations move away from this wholesaler model. I think the Amazon effect has created that, and because we have eliminated a middleman, i.e., the wholesaler, then we're able to reduce costs, and then most organizations actually pass that cost along to the consumer, to us as a consumers. So that's why you'll see cheaper prices on Amazon as compared to other organizations, because Amazon has eliminated the middleman, i.e., the wholesaler, out of the equation. Okay, so whenever you see middleman, think of a wholesaler. Okay. Next, going back to the storing of goods. We refer to this as warehousing. So whenever if you're a manufacturing facility, right, you only have a certain amount of space to store those finished goods, because a manufacturing facility is going to store the raw materials on this part of the facility. The individuals actually pick those raw materials. They would move it to the production area of the manufacturing facility. It gets produced. Right? That's my producing step. And then once that finished good is done, then it sits at this other part of the facility, but there's only so much space for these finished goods to be stored. So what you have is you have to go send it to a warehouse so that information is, I mean, those finished goods are stored until, like a distributor such as Amazon, will purchase those finished goods from that manufacturer, and then they would send it from the warehouse to the Amazon distribution center. So whenever you see warehousing, just think that's the means of receiving and storing inventory within a manufacturing facility, for example. A number of other organizations have warehouses, but in this case, just think of it from a manufacturing perspective. You're also going to see a question in terms of international business. Once again, international business is doing business from one country to another. So if you work for an organization in the U.S. you do business in China, you do business in Korea, that's considered international business, right? If you're in Pennsylvania and you're doing business to a organization within California, that's domestic business. That is not international business, that is domestic business. All right. So just understand, the differences between domestic and international business on the question. And then another question you're going to see is a question in terms of competitive advantage. So one of the greatest comments that I've heard in terms of business is that a competitive advantage is only temporary, right? So organizations will always look to ensure they have a competitive advantage among their competitors, right? So that they can continue to maintain or increase their market share within their respective industries. Okay, so just be aware of competitive advantages, and one way, and there's a number of ways to achieve competitive advantages. Walmart achieves a competitive advantage, but because of their low prices. Other organizations will achieve a competitive advantage because of their efficiencies. You can see Amazon Prime as having a competitive advantage because of their efficiencies. We just talked about Walmart. Walmart tried that Amazon Prime model and did not succeed. And then you could probably see that in some cases, whenever you're buying from Amazon Prime, you might see a Walmart sticker, here and there, because Walmart does actually work with Amazon. Because, I mean, yes, it's a primary competitor, but if I'm going to generate revenue from the competitor, I'm going to work with Walmart. So I'm going to work with Amazon. So you will see, some purchases coming from Walmart whenever you go on Amazon Prime, especially for that same day shipping. So that is one thing. Once again, just ensure that you understand this concept of a competitive advantage. We're also going to see questions in terms of importing and exporting. Just know that whenever we're talking about imports, we are bringing materials into our country. So if we're bringing in electronics from China into the US, we are importing those products into the US from China. Okay. In terms of exporting, if we're manufacturing products within the US and exporting them out to Australia, for example, then we in the US are exporting products out to another country. In that example, we're exporting them out to Australia. Okay, so understand the differences between imports and exports. And then also understand the importance of collaboration with business partners in a supply chain. When I say business partners, I'm referring to customers and suppliers. And the importance of collaboration with customers and suppliers is that we want to create a win-win for all parties. When we create a win-win for all parties, we are increasing the transparency, we are increasing the communication among the business partners, and that in turn is going to increase revenue for all business partners. It's going to create increased revenue for our company. It's going to increase revenue for our suppliers. It's going to increase revenue for our customers. So that is why the collaboration is important among all business partners within a supply chain. We did talk briefly about Amazon. There is a term referred to as the Amazon effect. So what happened years ago when Amazon came into the scene, because Amazon previously was a book. Amazon previously just sold books, right? But then whenever they seen that distribution model was successful, then they expanded out to other products. Right. So because they were able to increase efficiencies, because they were able to ship products to consumers quicker than the competition at the time, being Walmart, right? At the time being small mom and pop facilities within certain cities and towns, then Amazon leveraged the internet, right? And Amazon leveraged e-commerce, right? To have consumers shift to online shopping, right? So that's why you'll see, so the Amazon effect essentially caused the closure of many of these small neighborhood stores, because they could not compete with Amazon from an availability perspective. They could not compete with Amazon from a cost perspective. Although these small stores had the same exact products as Amazon, because Amazon was purchasing such large quantities of these products as compared to these small mom and pop stores, then I can just simply go online and wait an extra day to get those products, as opposed to going down the street and paying, a couple dollars more, right? Amplify that. If I need about 10 items, I can wait an extra day and just go to Amazon and wait and use Amazon Prime. And in some cases, I can get it the same day. Sometimes I can get it quicker from Amazon than I can going down to the store in the same town as I live in, right? So that particular model changed the way we done business, or to change the way we purchase products, I should say. And that's referred to the Amazon effect, because it disrupted the entire retail market. Going back to logistics, you're going to see a question in terms of logistics cost, and the largest component of those logistics costs are going to be the transportation costs themselves. Now, a lot of people, you'll see the term transportation and logistics used, together, but transportation is just one component of logistics, right? There's also administrative costs that go into logistics. There's inventory cost that goes into logistics, but essentially the transportation cost is the largest cost in terms of logistical cost. Okay. In terms of international transportation, once again, we have multiple modes of transportation. We already talked about, ocean freight or water freight. We also talked about carrier freight or trucking. You also have rail freight, right? And then you also have pipeline. So oil and gas, that's also a mode of transportation. So whenever we're looking at the modes of transportation from an international perspective, we also have the two main modes of international transportation is going to be air freight, or water freight, water or ocean freight, right? Those are going to be the two main modes, because you can't really do carrier or trucking from an international perspective. You can't really do, although you can do some pipeline in international and over in Europe, you can't really do pipeline as a mode of transportation from the US to Australia, for example. But I can do water and air from the US to Australia. So once again, water and air freight is going to be the two major modes of transportation from an international perspective. When we talk about business models, you're going to have a question on one organization in terms of what their business model is. Whenever you're looking at business models, you may have some business models based on low sales volume. If you have low sales volume, then that means you create scarcity, you create exclusivity, and if you have that, then you can charge a higher price, right? That's some business models of some like luxury brands, or some automotive brands like Lamborghini or Bugatti or something like that. You may also have some organizations that are localized to their particular country, right? So you'll have some organizations in the US that says made in the USA, right? And that's their business model. And they'll get a number of they'll get a number of consumers that buy from them because those products are made in the USA, right? So that's another business model that organizations can use. Now you'll have another business model where these companies will create their model based on high sales volume. So if you have a high sales volume, then you can charge lower prices, right? So you'll have some companies such as Walmart, such as Amazon that will have a business model based on high sales volume. And then you have other organizations that have a business model based on high wages. So in the technology industry, their business model, like, Google and Meta, formerly Facebook, you can have a business model based on innovation, but if you need a workforce that is innovative, that can bring in the best and brightest from the world, right, you have to pay high wages. So that could be a particular business model in some industries, right? So those are some examples of business models that you may see. You're going to see one example on the exam. And next question you're going to have is supply chain concerns, supply chain challenges. You're also going to have a scenario of when do we have supply chain challenges from a technology perspective? You're also going to think about, when do we have supply chain challenges and issues based on transportation? If you look at the issue that happened with the Suez Canal a couple of years ago now, whenever the one boat, the Ever Given, was stuck in the Suez Canal, and given that a large percentage of goods flow through the Suez Canal, it created a transportation and logistical concern for the whole entire world. So that is another concern that could arise. Also because of threats to different countries, security can be a concern. 9/11 was a security concern within the United States, and because of that, a number of leaders of organizations had to rethink their supply chain strategies, had to rethink of how they would build their supply chain networks to mitigate the risk of these security concerns. So you're going to have a question in terms of security concerns and transportation concerns, as well as technology concerns. And then the next question is, you need to understand the flows, and you need to understand that those three flows that we talked about in the beginning of this video, in that they move both upstream and downstream. Right now, that's a very important piece. You have 2 or 3 questions that ask about the supply chain flows, but you need to understand that those flows move both upstream and downstream. Okay. You're going to have another question in terms of logistics, given that we had a whole entire week on discussing logistics, and you need to understand the primary functions of transportation and logistics, and in that it is primarily concerned with ensuring the safety of the product from point A to point B, right? You need to ensure that one of the main functions of logistics is to get the right product to the right place at the right time. Right. So that's one question that you want to see in terms of logistics and packaging. And you're also going to see questions in terms of inbound and outbound logistics. And once again, inbound logistics is where we're going to receive products in to our organization, inbound to our organization. Outbound logistics is essentially where we're going to be sending product out from our facility to our consumers, for example. Inbound, we're bringing products into our facility. Outbound, we are sending products out of our facility. Okay. Also, we're almost done here. We only have about 3 more topics to cover. So you're going to see a question in terms of different manufacturing types. You're going to see questions in terms of make to stock, assemble to order, make to order, and engineer to order. So going through those really quick, in that Make to stock. Make to stock is where I'm going to produce a number of products based on my forecast. So I'm going to be forecasting I need to make 5,000 iPhones in October, right? So I'm going to manufacture 5,000 iPhones, and I'm going to make those to stocks. I'm going to make the 5,000 iPhones, and I'm going to put them to my stock in my warehouse, right? I'll make them all at one time, and then I store them in my warehouse until an order from T-Mobile or Verizon comes in. So I'm going to keep making the stock, keep making the stock, keep making the stock, keep making the stock. And then as those products are sitting in the warehouse, that the inventory is being decremented down as I'm still producing, right? So the make to stock is a continuous production process in most cases until I hit my maximum inventory level. Assemble to order. Assemble to order is done a lot in terms of customized items. You will have certain organizations that will make what we refer to as sub-assembly, so parts of my products, and then I'm going to wait for an order to come in until I assemble those products, that customized order, right? To put them together. So a Tesla, for example, Tesla will have the battery packs. Tesla will have all of the components. Tesla will have the different color seats. And until someone goes on the Tesla website and orders exactly what type of Tesla they want, what color they want, what types of rims they want, what color interior they want, then they will assemble it, because that consumer has customized their Tesla, and then they'll actually assemble the Tesla together. So assemble to order, think of Lego blocks. That's all I always say. So when an order comes in, they'll assemble a Tesla like Lego blocks. Make to order. So make to order and assembler order are different in that with make to order, you're actually making everything from scratch. You don't have those components kind of waiting for an order to come in. You're going to be manufacturing the actual sub-assemblies. And then even after you manufacture the sub-assemblies, you're still making that product. You're still waiting for that order to come in before you begin to manufacture the sub-assemblies, manufacture all the products, and then you'll eventually put the finished good together. So that's the difference between assemble to order and make to order. Where make to order, you're making all those products at one time. Where assemble to order, I already have the sub-assemblies made, the portions of the finished good made, and then I'm putting them together like Lego blocks, right? And then engineer to order. So engineer to order is done a lot within the airline industry, where Boeing and Airbus will wait for these airlines, Southwest, Delta, American, to place an order. And then they'll actually work with Delta, American to engineer exactly what they want. And then they'll actually make the airplane, right? So that's engineer to order. Engineer to order is a collaboration between the customer and the manufacturer to engineer exactly what they want. Bridges, architecture, same exact thing. They will work with the client, they'll work with the government, the client, whoever, to make the blueprint before they actually manufacture or make or build the bridge, right? So engineer to order. Done a lot within bridge building, done a lot with architecture for homes and things like that, as well as with the airline industry. So once again, we're going to talk about upstream and downstream. And if you're whenever you're talking about when something is done earlier in the process, that means if it's earlier, it's more upstream in the supply chain. Okay, so if it's later, it's downstream. If it's earlier in the process, it's more upstream. Okay, and then the last question is again, once again, more based on the different types of manufacturing. When we talk about make to stock, make to order, assemble to order, and engineer to order. And once again, just you can rewind this recording and see the differences between that. So hopefully we went through every question that's going to be on the exam. Hopefully those examples provided a little bit of clarity. You're going to have 20 questions. I'm not going to put a time limit on it. So if you have any issues, if you have any questions, just please reach out. Thank you.